Welcome to Dental Success Beyond Chairside, the podcast that's dedicated to revolutionising the way dental professionals succeed beyond the dental chair. Join us for a unique blend of insightful interviews with industry experts to help you thrive in your dental specialist practice. In each 20-minute episode, we'll delve into a variety of subjects, including HR, marketing, innovative techniques and systems, and AI to help transform your practice and unlock its full potential. Whether you're a dentist or specialist looking to enhance your practice, this podcast is your go-to resource for professional, personal, and profitable success. Hello everyone and welcome to Dental Success Beyond Chairside. Is your team dictating to you what they want? Are they just working the way they have in other practices they've worked in? In this episode, I'm joined by Veronica Smith, founder of EPICC Solutions, who is all about making workplaces awesome. Their mission is to help businesses build strong and positive cultures that inspire their employees to do their best work. Veronica is a huge advocate of values being the underlying foundation in any business. Veronica, can you share your story and provide some insight on why you feel the importance of values is integral for success and how you've seen this work in workplaces?
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Michelle, for having me on today. And I'm really looking forward to chatting with all of your listeners about something that is a huge passion of mine. I've always been very, very curious about what makes people tick. Over time, I've developed a business that kind of sits in that HR, people and culture space, but really does focus on that mission around helping organisations build strong and positive cultures so that their employees are inspired to do their best work. What I found as a business owner myself, but also as an employee in many different organisations, was that often what would happen is the workplace dynamic would not necessarily be optimal. Workplaces can be really intricate and complex. The relationships can be very complex. Sometimes that can lead to a level of conflict. It could be very minor conflict, but if it's not addressed, that conflict can develop into something that some people describe as a toxic culture. So that brings about stress and a whole lot of other behaviours that are really not conducive to a productive practice. What I would observe in my business is the negative behaviours often that the business leader would be commenting on or talking about. I refer to that as devolving. These behaviours are devolving behaviours. We really want to aim for our people in the organisation to be always evolving. We want to empower them to do their best work. My focus on workplace culture and how I define that is how we play the game in our business. We like to make it fun. We don't want to make it, too serious and boring. But if you think about your workplace as a game, and there's so many different, choices of the game that you want to play. The culture really refers to how we play that game. As well as choosing the game we want to play, we want to set the boundaries. We want to create some rules around that. The great thing about creating that structure of culture is that the people that are playing in the game have a lot more idea about how to do it and how to do it really well. It'd be like if we, ran onto the football field and there were no goals at the end of the football field, we wouldn't know how to achieve the win. I think it's really important that business leaders understand how to empower their people by giving them the goals and the objectives to aim for. And that really does form the culture of the organisation. It's the experience that everybody has. Like a workplace is really a community. What we're wanting to do is make sure that everybody in that community, whether it's your clients, your customers, even your visitors, are experiencing that great workplace culture that you want to try and develop.
You set up goals and objectives. That's coming from the owner of the business. Once those goals and objectives are set up, you talked about having devolving behaviours. How do you have evolving behaviours?
It's very simply a matter of understanding what actually happens with an individual. We refer a lot, obviously, to emotions because that's what most people can relate to. They're either feeling really bad or they're feeling really good. The way that they react to to the environment is because of the values that they hold high. Those values that are serving a purpose for them will often trigger certain types of behaviour. As a business leader, when I'm working with business leaders around leadership, a lot of it is learning and understanding how to read people's behaviour and understand what values are driving it. So our values are neither good nor bad. They serve a purpose or they don't serve a purpose, and we can raise and lower them as we need to. What I've found is that in a lot of workplaces that are experiencing those more negative cultures or toxic cultures, it's because there's been no clarity or focus around the values that are actually driving the organisation, and there's been a lack of focus on the actual development of culture, because that'll develop regardless. Whether you're intentional about it or not, that culture will develop, and it is based on the values of not only the company but all of the individuals within it.
So for dental practices, for instance, if they haven't got any values, as you said, everybody has different values about being there. Patients come to the practice because they have different values about being there as well. Obviously, the owner has their goals and their objectives or their vision of why they want to be there, and then they share that. If you had all of the team members around saying, why do you work here? What do you think we give to other patients? What sets us apart from our competitors? Why do you think your patients would come here? You can brainstorm all of those ideas, and then you can maybe use AI to get down those values into 5 or 6 values so that everybody's on the same page. Would that be a good thing to do, Veronica?
Yeah, absolutely. It's quite a process, because you're actually, if you can imagine, you're asking your people to divulge something that is very personal. Values are our personal beliefs and principles, and they develop over our entire lifetime. And look, to be honest, most individuals don't really spend a lot of time reflecting on their values, and they don't necessarily understand that everything that we do is action of our values. Our values are what drives our behaviour. So yes, to understand as an individual what are your personal values, because that'll help you understand how you and why you are reacting the way that you are reacting. Of course, for the leadership or the executive team, very important to understand what is driving their people. We haven't even talked yet about the company values, because the company values are going to be important as well. So a well-facilitated strategic process, it gives them the ability to develop the very strong culture around sharing of the values, and then coming to a consensus about what the core values are. I would always ask a business leader, a practice manager, right up front, what are your organisation's core values? If they weren't able to articulate that really clearly, and then show me how it's demonstrated in the operations of the practice, then I would want to go right back to the start and perhaps develop that from the beginning. Values change as well. Company values that are, 5 years after they're developed may actually need to be reviewed. I'm doing that with an organisation at the moment. They've got great clarity around their values, but they've been there for a number of years now, and things have changed. The world has changed.
The landscape of dentistry has changed with COVID, and a lot of team members have left. They've got all new team. Revisiting those core values is important. I was interested how you have said that they need to demonstrate those core values, because you hear a lot of people say about, we've got this value and we've got that value. One of the examples I personally used was a consultant that went into a practice in Canada, and that dentist said, I really value, clinical excellence and training. She looked at the profit and loss, and there was not 1 cent spent on training.
I'm a classic. I really value exercise. Then I look at my calendar, my diary, and I haven't allocated any time in my week for exercise. It can be as basic as that.
Yeah, that's so funny, isn't it? And in the next 2 episodes coming up after this, we've actually got an owner who set up the values from the outset and has created a team through those values of going there. Another person who actually revisited her values, like what we've just discussed with the entire team, and how it's been quite transformational for her. Once you've got these values and everyone understands how they're going, how can that change the dynamics of everything, Veronica?
Well, like I said, it's through that understanding of others. We know that to have really good, strong, productive productive and effective relationships, one of the key factors of that is empathy. Empathy is the ability to understand the other person and their perspectives. I guess differences in a modern workplace too is that we are very focused on diversity. Even with a fairly homogenous group where we all might look and sound the same, there's going to be a lot of diversity because we're actually going to have very different perspectives. And those perspectives, once again, are based on our own experiences and those filters, our education, where we live, how we've lived, how we've been raised, whether we're religious or not. All of those filters are going to create perception of the world, and being able to understand others' perspectives is really the key to this. And because what I do is really about minimizing or managing as best you can conflict and reducing those outcomes of conflict, which is, stress and burnout, etc. Just even that very simple process of using a framework or a model to learn how to understand other people gives you a respect for the diversity that other people bring. We all have different strengths and talents and gifts, and we all have different voids and weaknesses as well. That's why even having that clarity around your values is even very important for the recruitment process, because you want to make sure that the people that you're attracting are the ones that are aligned with the company values and are actually going to work in that dynamic that you already have. And then you want to hold on to those people because it's very costly replacing people. So you really want to make sure that the values that you're talking about are what everybody experiences. Another aspect that I find is often missed. A lot of companies have great core values and they're on the website or they're on a lovely poster on the wall and they get talked about a lot. If the experience of those values isn't demonstrated, they need to be measured. You need to be able to measure that those values are actually being demonstrated and being experienced. I guess that's where we ask for feedback around those values. Often we ask for feedback around customer service, usual things, but the experience of the people in your workplace, whether they're, like I said, visitors or clients or employees, is really important to make sure that you're actually living those values in the practice.
It is really good to see that. I saw that work in real life. At a practice I was at with regard to honesty. There was not a great outcome for a patient. What are we going to say to that patient? Was the owner was like, well, we'll have to tell the truth. One of our core values is honesty. He rang up the patient and said, look, we want this get checked out by the general dentist. We're concerned about it. We've spoken to the general dentist, all costs are covered. It ended up to be all fine. They went to the dentist and she ended up to be a raving fan. That was actually a really nice thing for the team members to see, that one of those values was honesty. So you wanted to have that honest environment. What do you feel about putting values? Because I advocate having your values as part of your performance appraisals and maybe even part of your job description documents. What are your thoughts on that, Veronica?
Absolutely. Like I said, right from the recruitment process, when I'm helping businesses with their recruitment, we will use the language of those values in the advertisement. Once you've got the foundational understanding of what those values are, and I'll just go back to when you mentioned the value of honesty. The other thing that's really interesting, Michelle, is that probably you and I might have quite a different frame of what honesty means. So in that practice that values honesty, I would suggest maybe, the person who has the ability to skillfully communicate honesty to someone may work better than someone who has a very direct, blunt approach, for example. We're not necessarily thinking just about ourselves, but how is the other person going to respond? And if I know that person really well, I know their personality profile, I know what their values are, and I know that, for example, they're going to really value maybe a coaching style of honesty rather than a blunt style of honesty, then we can communicate in ways that match the values of the other people in the organisation. It's really important that everybody has a clear understanding and frame of what honesty means. Does that mean that we're just brutal all the time, or is there a time and place for that? Is there a process for that? For example, during the performance, appraisal system, depending on what that is, I have one that's called a performance optimization process, so that it's what we're doing without having to do the really formal, because if you get to the performance improvement plan, obviously things have gone a bit awry. You don't want to get there. But how can we optimize performance and create a process that really is about optimizing performance rather than reviewing it or appraising it or evaluating it, which scares people, to be honest. A lot of people, quite put off by that. If they know that a value of that practice is to actually coach you to be better or coach you to be more empowered, there are certain values that the majority of people actually carry, and that's because even countries have a culture as well. So, for example, the leadership style in Australia that is the most preferred is what's called a captain coach leadership style. That's where, we want our leaders to be in the trenches with us, as opposed to, say, America, where they're quite happy to have their leaders sitting up on a pedestal. They're sort of like bowing down to them. Here in Australia, we call that tall poppy syndrome, and we want to pull them back down level with us. So having an understanding of that, which is really a kind of a behavioural science, I guess, can just make all the difference in a workplace environment.
Yes, so it's so complex. As you know, Veronica, I've spoken about, it's the biggest pain point for everybody. This series that we're doing on HR, we're addressing the personality that you've discussed, performance management, onboarding, training, mentorship, that type of thing as well, because there is so much into it. You've encompassed a lot of it in what you've spoken about already, but the underlying foundation for a practice for any business really is to have those goals and objectives, and then to have those values and understand them and have them on the same timeline. Basically, you're all going in the same direction and you're aligning yourself and all moving towards the same goals. At the end of the day, that makes for a happy team, a happy owner, and happy customers in a productive environment. Is there anything else that you'd like to add, Veronica, that we might not have touched on?
The only other thing I'd probably mention, it might be coming up in your future episodes, is that I do like to remind business owners that they actually have quite a large responsibility now with the workplace health and safety.
Yeah, we have. We've got Pauline Tarrant coming on to talk about that, particularly the WA changes.
Yeah. So I guess the work that I do is around, let's do what we can to minimise the possibility or the potential for our people to get to that stage where there's psychosocial injury. There's a lot that we can be doing as business leaders and owners to prevent that, just by creating that conducive environment. Not everybody's going to be happy every minute of the day, but if they're, generally we're getting feedback that everyone's happy, and I judge it by a state of flow. If people are feeling a general state of being in flow as opposed to being in a state of resistance, then you're doing
Excellent. All right. Well, so thank you so much, Veronica, for your insights today. For more information about Veronica Smith and EPICC Solutions, including links to her work and social media profiles, check out the episode description. Thank you so much again, Veronica, for coming on. It's been wonderful having a chat to you today. Perhaps we might have you on a little bit more about some other subjects that we touched on that we might be not touching on in our series here. Thank you so much.
It was my absolute pleasure. Thanks so much, Michelle.
No worries. Bye. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast or YouTube channel. Your feedback helps us bring you more valuable content and inspiring stories from leaders in the dental industry. In our next episode of Dental Success Beyond Chairside, we'll be joined by Dr. Ash Shah, owner of Shenton Park Village Dental. Dr. Ash has built her practice around a clear mission and values, creating a roadmap to success that's been instrumental in her growth. If you're looking to create a strong foundation for your practice, this episode will provide great insights. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.